Hi and welcome back to the cottage. Today I want to talk about the question that I get asked most often week after week, and that is how to get somebody on board with minimalism or a more simple lifestyle. It can be really frustrating when you are wholeheartedly excited about a new change that is happening in your life. You've begun to see the benefits, but yet you get pushback or resistance from the people that you love most. Sadly, this scenario plays out time and time again with people who are discovering minimalism and realizing how wonderful it has been for their lives. They want their loved ones, their spouses, their children to come along with them on the journey, and yet they aren't as excited about it as you think that they should be. Of course, we all know that there's no way to persuade someone into agreeing with a certain topic, belief, or way of life. They really do need to make that decision for themselves. But I thought that I would offer up some tips and ideas that you could implement in your life that might make them a little bit softer to the idea of minimalism and simple living. The first is to share your feelings genuinely. The worst thing that you could do is to go into your home and demand that everyone clean up their act and throw out their things. That's going to feel like a bulldozer to them, and they're going to situate themselves like a rock. They are not going to want to budge in that scenario. It's better to sit down with your family members, your loved ones, and tell them how the clutter is making you feel. If it raises your stress levels or anxiety, makes you feel unhappy, let them know this. It's best to have these conversations as early in your minimalism journey as you possibly can to keep those lines of communication going and to be sure that you're not keeping these feelings bottled up inside to the point where you're just going to explode and go on a rampage with a black garbage bag around your house. Like I said, that is not a good technique to use. Talking is also going to be really helpful for the second tip, and that is to not assume that they like the mess or the clutter. There may be a situation happening in your home where your loved ones just don't feel like they have a good sense of organization or the ability to care for their things. They may actually be feeling overwhelmed by having too many choices, and you might even be surprised to find that they don't even really care about the items that they have, but the idea of expending all of the mental and physical time on their belongings is too overwhelming for them, and so they'd rather just avoid the situation altogether. And if you find that that is the case, then you can step side by side with them and help them out on their decluttering efforts. I know that's something that I did with my husband when we were just starting out. I had been practicing minimalism for a while, and he confided in me that he was feeling really overwhelmed by his clothing, but didn't know how to make the best decisions about what to keep and what to get rid of. And so we linked arms and we got the job done together, and that made it a win-win for both of us. And if you're still getting a lot of pushback and realize that they're not able to declutter much, even with your help, you need to recognize and find peace with the fact that you really can only control what is yours. The fact of the matter is that what you see as clutter, many times it's not your own things. It's the other stuff around that you don't have attachment to or plans for. But you need to remember that your loved ones do have those attachments and those plans. So the comic book collection, the middle school medals, or even the little rocks that your kids have in a box under their beds, those are things that are special to them. They are not clutter items to them at all. And they have plans for them, they have attachments to them in ways that you really can't understand. And so the best thing to do is just focus on what are your own personal belongings, your clothing. Maybe if you're the only one that works in the kitchen, for example, you could tackle the kitchen items. But those really personal things, they're gonna have to be off limits for a while, at least until they make that decision for themselves. Tip number 4 then is to lead by example and make your feelings known. So back to that communication piece, as you're going through your belongings, then let your loved ones know how it's making you feel. So as you're going through and maybe getting rid of even some sentimental things that you had in your life but you really don't have a connection to anymore, mention to them how you are excited that somebody else is going to be able to treasure this item in the future. Or as you're going through your clothing, for example, you could say how much it's freeing you up to have more time in the morning because you're not having to spend a lot of time making a decision about what fits well and what looks good on you, and let them know how these changes are making you feel as you're going through the process of going through your own belongings. Actions really do speak louder than words, and sometimes people just need to witness the joy and the happiness that something is bringing somebody to really feel pulled into that as well. Tip number 5 is to practice patience. Give them time. This is a really big one. Not everyone is going to come to the same conclusion about things at exactly the same time. In fact, it might take them years to come to these decisions, and you may find that your loved one decides to join you in the journey and then falls away, isn't as excited about it for a while, but then maybe comes back and does that a couple of times before they really commit to the process. And that's okay too. Give them that space, give them the encouragement as they're going through this journey for themselves. I know that from the time that I first decided that clutter was stressing me out and I wanted to do something about it, from that point until when I actually started calling myself a minimalist and living by those principles, it was probably a 3-year span. And so a lot had changed in my life during those 3 years. And the same goes for your loved one. A lot can change over time. And so let time naturally evolve. You may find that it may be years down the road that suddenly they make that decision for themselves, and that patience would have paid off. Another great thing that you can do is to put yourself in their shoes and try to imagine the feelings that your loved ones are experiencing when being asked to join on this journey of minimalism. They may have a little bit of fear. They might feel overwhelmed at the task at hand, maybe feeling a little bit defensive for being confronted or told that they are the problem with all of the things that they have. Or they might feel a little sad about the idea of having to, get rid of some of the things that they find as precious that hold all of these memories. They might be worried that they are going to lose some of these memories. And so really understand the feelings that they have compassion for these feelings because these are all valid. And then once you are able to recognize them, you can try to turn them in a more positive light. So for example, if you find that your kids are really anxious about donating some of their toys because they're worried that they can't have any fun without them, show them some different ways that they can still have fun without the stuff. Have some art supplies for them so they can be creative or go on a nature hike. Just get down to their level and play with them and show them some different ways that they can play without all of the toys. And that might be just enough for them to realize for themselves that it's going to be okay. Tip number 7 is to set some boundaries, and you can start really small on this one, just organizing a drawer, a space maybe that the entire family uses, and then keep that space organized so that everybody can really witness how wonderful it is to have that area clean and you know where everything is. You can put things away easily, and then you can graduate into maybe having entire rooms as clutter-free zones, maybe some neutral spaces in the home like the living room or the dining space that you deem to be clutter-free areas, and allow those messy rooms to still happen. Again, going back to the idea that you really can only control what is yours. Perhaps your kid's bedroom is a disaster, but if you don't go in there that often, you maybe just need to be able to let that go and let them have that space as long as you're able to maintain these more neutral zones in your home. Number 8, show them how to streamline. One of the things that I discovered early on in my minimalism journey was that having less to manage really allowed me to be more efficient in my daily tasks and routine. And that might not be a benefit that everyone notices from the outside looking in. And so you might need to really show them how to do that. For example, if your spouse complains about the overwhelm of laundry and never having clean clothes, work through a system that will allow that chore to be done in less time overall. That might mean setting up to do just one load a day or leaving the work for one day of the week when all of it can be washed, dried, put away, and reset so that clean clothes are basically always available. Staying on top of this particular chore may show them in a more clear and hands-on way how beneficial it would be to deal with fewer clothing items. And that could lead to some decluttering. Down the road, it may lead to wanting more efficiencies in other aspects of life, and in turn, even more decluttering. Tip number 9 is to decide together to freshen up one room in your home. If you can get an agreement to transform one space fully, that could really help to get others on board with the greater overall plan of simple living and minimalism. I would suggest clearing everything out of the room, painting the walls a fresh or relaxing color, and then making some decisions about what to put back in. I think it's important for this tip to not try to just do it all yourself and then offer a big reveal at the end of what has taken place. The pride of ownership really comes from actually being involved in the process, so be sure to tackle it together. The 10th tip is to minimize incoming items. Now, you might not be able to declutter as much in your home overall if you're feeling that pushback from your loved ones, your family members, and you can't control their belongings. But what you can control is what you bring into the home personally. So this might mean that you start to curb some of your buying habits. You aren't, shopping as often anymore, or maybe you start practicing the one in and one out method where before you bring something new in, you donate an item. This is just going to allow you to have a little bit of peace of mind knowing that you are not making the situation bigger than it already is. And along those same lines, tip number 11 is to go gift free. Intentionality is such a huge concept with minimalist living, but if you aren't in the practice of it, you may find it difficult to do. When you agree that no physical gifts will be exchanged, there's a sort of forced intentionality that comes from it. Spending quality time together in lieu of tangible gifts is a wonderful substitute. I'm willing to bet that it won't even feel like a compromise. And it might just plant that seed for the person who is hesitant to practice minimalism or to live more simply, that stuff is temporary, but memories are forever. Number 12, try some games and get the whole family involved. I'm not talking about board games here, but minimalism games, and there's a lot of them. One that I like to try is to find a box or a bin and set a timer for maybe 30 minutes. Go around like a scavenger hunt around your house with your whole family and find items that are no longer considered, needed anymore. Put them in the box and see if you can fill that box before the timer goes off. It's a lot of fun. Another thing that you can do as a family is to declutter one item for each day of the month. So again, you're going to want to have a box or a bin. The first of the month, you're going to find one item that you can put in that box. The second day of the month, you're going to find two, and so on and so forth until you get to the end of the month and find that that box has many items in it. It's just really fun to see how much progress can be made when you're consistent. So again, getting everyone involved and having fun with this journey is a great thing to do. There's a lot of different games, like I said, you can search them up online, and I will also have a couple that I've done personally listed down in the description box. And if you make some traction while playing these games, you may be able to commit to a 1 to 3 month trial period of minimalism. So again, this is just a temporary thing, but it is going to require a little bit more effort. The idea here is that you would box up any items that are not considered the most used items in your home, so any of the excess stuff, and set it away somewhere in like a storage area of your home, maybe in the garage. And the idea is that your spouse or your family members can then truly get the experience of living with less without actually having to get rid of these items. They may find that it isn't nearly as difficult as they were thinking, or that they don't miss the boxed up items at all. And so they might be more willing at that point to do some decluttering. But if that's not the case, as part of this agreement, you need to be willing to allow everything back in. Tip number 14 is to talk through various scenarios. The first would be to establish a why. What would your loved one stand to gain from this venture? Maybe it's the idea that there would be more money opened up since you wouldn't be bringing in a lot of excess items that you don't need, maybe more time for vacationing or other hobbies, or perhaps the lure of being able to afford higher quality items instead of spending it on a lot of random, maybe low quality or junk type items. You can also talk about the question of how you want to live your life going forward and write those things down. That is the goal. And then ask item by item if this particular thing is supporting that lifestyle. For example, if you both agree that you'd like to retire soon and maybe downsize your home, you can then look at your large sofa that you have or your large dining room table and really decide if that fits into that future goal. Another question or scenario might be, what if we have to evacuate quickly or move suddenly? What would we choose to bring with us? And this might be a clear way to identify those priority items and then recognize that everything else is just extra. And the final thing on this list, and probably most important, is to be okay knowing that this lifestyle is not for everyone and your loved one may never join you on this journey. You may have to go it alone. The real heart of the question of how to get my loved one on board with minimalism or simple living really does tie back to the fact that the person asking the question is probably bothered by clutter, bothered by mess, but yet the loved one doesn't really seem to care, maybe isn't picking up after themselves as much as they would like, or putting things back the way that they would like them to. And in this scenario, it may be just that. They may just be honestly a little bit lazy in that regard, just don't see the importance in it. If having a clutter-free and tidy house all the time is the aesthetic that you are really wanting and that brings you happiness and joy, but yet everyone else in your home could care less about that, then you are probably going to be the one doing most of the legwork, putting in most of the effort to get that done. And as much as you can, try not to be bitter about this extra effort that you're putting in, recognizing that this is a choice that you're making when you prioritize this certain look and feeling in your home, and be okay with that. Be okay with doing this extra work to get that look, even if your family members, your loved ones, never really join you in the effort. Well, I hope that this list gave you some unique ideas on ways that you can present the topics, the concepts of minimalism to your spouse, your family members, to let them know really how important and impactful minimalism has been in your life, and maybe that will allow them to try out minimalism and perhaps join you in the journey. But I want you to remember that even if that doesn't happen, that you have a great community here that is willing to support you and encourage you along the way, and you can ask any question that you want and we will try our best to help you out. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope that you'll stop by the cottage again really soon.